Hi, and welcome to Online Logic. My name is Timothy McKenzie, and I'll be your instructor this semester. I like to do just some introductory videos, kind of just give you a human face to some of the lessons, as well as a chance, sort of, for those of you who prefer to learn through, listening and audio, video. I try to introduce each unit, give a few pointers, sort of what to look for, and that kind of thing. So, as far as everything goes in the course, I just kind of want to run through a few basics I want to make sure everybody's aware of. The first one is that all the deadlines in the course are on Mondays. Sometimes they're 1 week lessons, and sometimes they can be like maybe there might be a 4 week lesson that over spring break, but maybe 3. I'd have to look back now. So I mean, they kind of can vary in length. There are 10 modules. And so modules are kind of the idea of they're like kind of self-contained units where everything in that module, there's a quiz, there's readings, there's assignments, there's, discussion board. And so whatever goes on in that period of time, whether it's 1 week or 4 weeks, will have those components and everything will be within it. So as far as it goes, all of those are due on Mondays, which is end of the day Monday, 11:59 p.m. However, all of them are also set to stay open until 10 a.m. Well, I don't know if they're even set to close at 10 a.m., but the deadline is 11:59 p.m. on Monday. But usually what happens is I'm not going to grade any of this or really get into it until Tuesday. And so I always say, if you want to wait until, if you're like up against the deadline or you have to run to work, you don't need to email me, just finish it up in the morning. But I do ask you get it done by 10 a.m. Tuesday. After that, then you would need to ask for an exception and say, I've had some problems, some issues, whatever it is. As far as it goes, I'm usually pretty nice about working with people. I realize all of us have lives. A lot of the reasons why we're taking and teaching online is because we have busy lives. I have 2 little boys. They're 4 and 6. And so, they sometimes, you never know when they're going to be sick or have other things, and of course work and a million other commitments. And so I realize a lot of you have similar situations. Some of you work long shifts and other things. And so, I realize life gets in the way, and I'm more than happy to, work with you. People will find that I'm usually pretty agreeable and will give you a little extra time. But if you start asking for it 2, 3, 4 times, then my patience grows a little weary, and I'm not likely to actually help you at that point. I'm going to probably just tell you, you've kind of outworn my patience. But if it happens once or twice, just go ahead and send me an email. I'm usually pretty agreeable. The big thing I do ask is that you send me the email prior to the deadline, not, the day after. If you forget and you email me the day after, the first time I'll be okay with it. But, I do kind of warn you. Now, the end of the semester, the last module, and the last final project, those I'm usually not at all agreeable on. It's like if you miss those, you miss those, because I have deadlines myself. As far as it goes, I think there's a few things I want to talk about. One of them is the final project. This is kind of not exactly sure what order I'm doing everything in. But the final project, if you look in the modules under the assignment modules or course modules for this course, you will find that there are there's a folder called the final project. I also call it my logic scavenger hunt. And basically what I'm asking you to do is I want to see that you learn the concepts. So like we're going to learn about like deductive and inductive arguments, and we're going to learn about fallacies, logical fallacies, both formal and informal. We're going to learn about, formal fallacies, informal fallacies, and there's one other category, and I'm forgetting what that category is. But anyway, so there's like 5 different categories, and what we're doing is I'm asking you to go out and say like, okay, I found an argument, and this would fall into the camp of being deductive, and it's an argument from definition, or this is an inductive argument, it's an argument from prediction or whatever. And so then you would be able to classify it as a deductive, inductive, explain it. And so what I'm asking you to do is to go out and see these. And so, if you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, you're on any of these social media, or you're reading the newspaper, magazine, watching TV, having a conversation with a family member, any of these things, you can find these examples there and then put them into this project. And it demonstrates that you are able to detect these things in the world. And if you go to that folder, it'll give you a little more detail. You have to find 40 of these. This is a project that you need to be working on. You probably don't need to start working on it the first week of the semester, but I would definitely suggest by the time we get to about module 4 or 5, which is probably about halfway, we'll have covered the fallacies module. And I would say at that point, the people who do the best will begin, working on it just a couple hours a day, because trying to find fallacies, trying to find argument types, if you try to do it all in one day and cram, it will be a miserable day, and I do not recommend you doing that. So, as far as it goes, if you... as far as logic goes in general, the one thing I always want to say is that logic, I think, is, as far as philosophy courses go, is one of the more difficult, it's one of the more technical, one of the more mathematical of the areas of philosophy. Logic is really about what is reason, how do we reason? And so, what we do is we try to break down the language, and we try to follow the linguistic cues or the concepts and try to create an argument, or we try to figure out how an argument works. And so we try to strip it of its language. And what we find is that by stripping of its language, we can symbolize statements in English, and we can categorize things in English, and we can then apply certain things like Venn diagrams and deductive reasoning and truth tables and a variety of methods, and we can actually evaluate the validity or invalidity, how strong an argument is, without getting bogged down in all the emotion and the ideas. And so, if you're a big Trump supporter, or you're a big Trump hater, or if you're a big whatever, you can then as far as it goes, you cannot, if you're looking at an argument from somebody from the opposite side, you're not getting bogged down in statements you think they're saying that are false. You're focusing on the statements and how well they work together to prove the point. And so that's what logic is about. And in that regard, it can become very mathematical, very technical, because we can symbolize and do other things. As a result of that, a lot of people find that difficult. But the one thing I always say about logic is we use different methods of doing this. And so to a certain degree, logic can be very compartmentalized as a topic. We may do truth tables, and how you translate things fall into like natural deduction, or how you do Venn diagrams, or of course, you can evaluate those arguments by using natural deduction if you change up the language of them. But the case is that let me think of how I want to say this. But the thing is with all those is that you can still evaluate all these arguments with these methods, but when you move on to a new method, it is a new method, and so you don't have to sit there and get bogged down and go, oh, well, do I remember the old method? Am I doing it correctly? Am I doing it wrong? Things like that. When you move on, you can kind of shut the door on the past a little bit and move on to the next one. So if you're having a hard time and you're struggling, oftentimes that doesn't mean you're going to struggle the rest of the semester. There's certain areas of logic that people really dislike, and there's certain areas people like. And so I think Venn diagram, by and large, are the least favorite of the people in the classes I teach. But I will also say that for me, I just like some of the early stuff. I don't always like the mapping of arguments, or the distinguishing between deductive and inductive. Everybody has a different area that they find the most difficult or the most troublesome, and so what I warn you to do is to kind of is not to get worried early on if you find an area that you don't like. Keep in mind other people are struggling, and that we will move on, and it will be a different ballpark, and you can still pass as long as you continue to work, do the final project well, continue to try to work on the homework. Especially if you work and try to put in a good effort. That's the best way to do it. As far as putting effort in, the thing I say is that with any online course, one of the things I always recommend is it's easy to forget about it. So what you really need to do is you need to set aside time each day or each week to work on the course. Ideally, with a course like Logic, don't try to do it all in one day, because if you try to do it all in one day, you're going to say, I'm going to spend 6 hours on Saturday working on this. That's fine, but sometimes you get frustrated after about 2 or 3 hours, and then you're not doing yourself any good by continuing just bang against the wall trying to find answers. So what I suggest is that you, what I would suggest is that you, as far as the 6 hours, as far as it goes, I suggest you put aside like maybe 3-4 days, maybe every day, like an hour or 2 hours to work on the course. Like if you're going to do it 3 days a week, do 2 or 3 hours. If you're going to do it every day, put aside like an hour, hour and a half, and just work on it a little bit each day. Because I think Logic is kind of like, pouring water into a funnel. If you pour it too quickly, it just spills and it goes everywhere. Logic's kind of one of those things where you kind of have to pour it and make sure that it's going down the funnel before you add more water. And so I would suggest you take it in small chunks. As far as other things to be successful, I will hold probably a couple review sessions during the semester. Come to those if you can. If you can't, reach out, email me, set up times when you can meet individually. I'm around. I'm not always around, but I'm around quite a bit. And I'm always willing to, if a student is having trouble, I'm always willing to come out and meet with you. That's part of my job, especially with an online course. I feel like, if you're struggling, I need to be available. And so don't be afraid to just ask me and say, hey, can I come by, and be willing to do that. I promise you, I am a perfectly nice person in person. Don't ask me by also. That's a little joke. Anyway, as far as things go, if you're working on lessons and you find an error, I always, as an incentive, if you see like grammatical errors, some language errors, an answer that's wrong, tell me, and I will give you extra credit. I'll give you 1 or 2 points that will allow me to fix the problem, and then it will allow me to do better. And part of it, I used to be an editor, a copy editor for a newspaper, worked in journalism. I teach journalism here at the college, did this for years. And, I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, but I try to perfect it. And so if you see an error on my part, I'll give you points. And that's my reward for that. As far as other things, there's 2 more things in each module to just be aware of. There's what's called the lesson certification. The lesson certification is a place for you to go and say, yes, I did the lessons. Like I read through everything. I did the problems you wanted me to do, that kind of thing. This is an on your honor system. If you want to say you did it and you didn't do it, well, that's your honor that's at stake, not mine. I personally don't, I think that being a reputable person is of greater importance than getting an A in a class, personally. But, that is, that's your thing. I would say be honest. If you're honest and you say, I didn't do it, but I'm taking it, you get half credit, you get 5 out of 10 points. And so, it's not going to probably affect your grade by just being honest. It might affect it if you're on the border, but it's not going to affect it with great levels. And so I would suggest you do that. The other thing is that the lesson certification is asking you, did you do everything? Well, then you have to go take the exam. And the exam is basically a timed environment where you have to do the logic problems you've been practicing. If you haven't done the practice, you're not going to be able to do these logic problems in the time allowed. And so you're going to be sitting there hitting your head against the wall and not get it done, not be able to answer them. The questions in the exam are not always exactly as they were in the book, just because doing a truth table long form on a time test would just be about impossible, and there's no real way to enter it. But that there are ways of asking questions that basically ask you to do it, and then I'm testing you on what that method or how that would look. And so that is one thing that I would suggest you do. Be prepared. If you don't do the lessons, you won't be prepared for those. Now, the final thing before I let you go is that this course is one I've been teaching now here at Lincoln Land for about 4 years. I ended up taking over this course kind of at the last minute from a gentleman named Marty Morris. Marty taught here and developed this course, and I ended up taking it over because he was diagnosed with cancer, and he died just a few months after that. And so I took it over, and so I used a lot of his stuff because I wasn't ready, but a lot of his stuff is really good, and so I've never changed it. And so what you'll find is I always want to give a little shout out to say thank you to Marty. He was a good guy, a great teacher. And so I think he deserves the credit. But if you're going through and you see some references to grandkids, that's him, not me. I don't have any grandkids. My kids are 4 and 6. You know, um, he also puts a lot of jokes and cartoons in, and so those are from him. So, have any questions? Email me.